Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Make Disciples podcast. Joining me in the podcast studio today is one of our shepherdesses, Catherine Sager. Catherine, glad to have you here with us.
Thank you. Thank you for the privilege to be here.
I'm so thrilled to hear a little bit more about your story, but let's start with some of the basics. So we've already said your name, but introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your family, how long you've been at Wildwood, those kind of things.
Okay. My name is Catherine Sager. I'm married to Ron. When I met Ron, he had one son. So we've been married 30 years this year. And we started coming to Wildwood around 2015 and then regularly by 2016.
Yeah. Well, glad to have you here. One of the big things we're doing here is talking about our faith stories. We all have our own story of what brought us to Jesus. So if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about your faith story. What led you to Jesus?
Okay. Well, my parents were immigrants from the Ukraine. They came to the United States in 1949 with two of my oldest sisters. Mm-hmm. And then my next oldest sister and I were born in the 50s in New Jersey. We spoke Ukrainian at home. We went to Ukrainian school on Saturdays as we got older, which we weren't too happy about because all our American friends were having snowball fights on a Saturday and I had to go to school. But anyway, it was all good. I can't say that we grew up in a Christian home. My father never went to church. Mm. My mother would take us to church a few times a year to a Catholic church, but we never talked about Jesus and we never prayed at home. We never talked about God. So I really didn't know the true story of what Jesus had done for me. And so by the time I got to college, I just stopped going totally. And I graduated college in the late 70s and started working in the computer field. And all through the 80s and into the early 90s, I was working with computers. And in the 80s, I kind of got mixed up with a bad group of people. They were partying a lot, doing drugs, and I started doing that as well. And I started doing cocaine. And for those of you that might not be familiar with cocaine, it's a white powder. And when you sniff, just take one little sniff, you're on top of the world. So you feel like you can do anything. And if you're a shy person, you'll be the first person talking to anybody at the party. So you can see the addictive nature of this drug and why it is, so hard to walk away from it. So all through the 80s, I was doing this. I became what I would call a functioning cocaine addict. And by that, I mean, I would get up in the morning, put on my suit, go to work, function perfectly well, get all kinds of accolades, promotions. And then at night, I would party. And I wouldn't say every night, but out of 7 days a week, probably 4 to 5 nights. And I became a very promiscuous person and just kept doing a lot more drugs. And so I hated my life. And by the early 90s, I hated the person I became. I hated myself. I saw no way out. It was a vicious circle. And I really didn't care if I died. I was so depressed that I just wanted to die because I saw no way out. And then in early 1992, I was coming back from a party, and I was driving on the highway, and all of a sudden, my car just got really dark. I was enveloped in darkness and sadness, and it was so heavy inside the car, and I got so sad. I had never, ever been this sad before in my life. And I just cried out, I cannot live like this anymore. I need help. And I just remember sobbing and sobbing all the way home. And what happened that week is nothing short of a miracle. That I know God had his hand in it every step of the way. I stopped doing cocaine that night. I never went back to hang out with those people. I started working out with a personal trainer at a gym. I started eating healthy. I started seeing a therapist for addictions, and I just started to feel so good physically and mentally about myself. And later that year, I talked with my director and said, I'd really like to change my career path from computers into sales. Can we make that happen? And so she said, yeah, we'll look into that. And a few months after that, I was offered one of 3 jobs. One would have been in Syracuse, New York. One was in Philadelphia. And then one was in Fort Lauderdale, Miami. And I thought, wow, I've never been to Florida. And this could be a whole new, exciting beginning part of my life. So I took Fort Lauderdale, sold everything I had, and moved down there. And this is in 1992, towards the end. I'm in my last couple of weeks of training when the director of Florida comes to talk to me and says, I know you took this job, Catherine, and you can stay here if you want, but I've got somebody that has family here and they would like to take this job, and maybe you could consider Tampa. And I had never been to Tampa either, so I said, whatever works best for you guys, I'll do. And he goes, well, why don't you go see Tampa, because it's a little bit different. So I went for the weekend to Tampa, and I was like, wow, this was like a sleepy town in 1992 compared to Fort Lauderdale then. Yeah. It might not be that way anymore, but Fort Lauderdale was more like New York City and New Jersey to me. So yeah, I came back and I said, yep, that's for me. I'll take it. And so this is early 1993. I'm working on my new job 3 weeks in when I meet Ron. And I got to tell you how I met this guy, because we were both in the building at the same time. It's like a 6-story high-rise. And there's 2 hallways going down. I'm walking down this hallway, and he's coming down this hallway. And then you turn, and the elevators are there. So we turned, and our eyes met, and it was like, wow, sparks flying. My heart was pounding, gut-wrenching. My head was spinning. I didn't know what was going on. And he told me later that he experienced that same thing. So we started dating. One of the first things that he bought me was a Bible that I still use today. He started taking me to church, and we started talking about God and praying together and Jesus, and I had never experienced anything like that. And in 1994, I accepted Christ as my Savior. And in 1995, Ron and I got married. So this is our 30th anniversary. And I can say without a doubt that God took me every step of the way from that night in the car. This isn't karma or, people say, oh, coincidence. No, I'll never, ever believe that. My Father in heaven took me every step of the way to get me to Ron. I mean, even that last Take Tampa, I could have said no. We would have never met. But God knew I was going to say yes, didn't he? So I give God all the glory. And I thank Ron for bringing me closer to my Father.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story. And one of the things I love about that is it's this amazing reminder that it really doesn't matter where you are in, what situation you're in, what difficulties you are in, what addictions you're in. God can get a hold of you, and yes, God can change your life as he did for you. Well, let's talk a little bit about Wildwood specifically. So you had moved to Tampa, but what eventually brought you to Tallahassee and to Wildwood?
Okay. Well, by then, I had already retired, and we're talking around 2015, and we were living on an RV. We didn't have an actual house at that point. So we came through Tallahassee and, stayed here for a few weeks on the RV and said, wow, this doesn't look like Florida. This is more like Georgia, the big trees and the Spanish moss. And we both fell in love with it. So Ron said, you want to get some more dirt and get a house? And I said, yeah. So we bought a house, and we've been here ever since. And that's when we started looking at churches and came to Wildwood and just really saw something we liked.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And since then, you've gotten more and more involved. I know I've appreciated you being a part of First Impressions and greeting people, but you're also a part of our Shepherdess ministry. What excites you about being involved with the Shepherdess ministry here at Wildwood?
Yeah, and I'm truly blessed to be a part of that. And for those ladies that might not know what the Shepherdess Ministry is, we're a group of women that come alongside you whenever you need to talk to somebody. You could be struggling in your marriage, could be struggling with your children, your job, your personal life, your siblings, whatever it is. And you just need someone to sit and listen to you. And that's what we do. And for me, it is a privilege to sit by a woman that is struggling with something and just listen to her story. I want to hear her story.
Yeah.
And I want to just listen and pray with her. And that's what we do. And it's truly been an amazing privilege in my life to be a part of that ministry. And I encourage any woman in the church that needs to talk to someone, come and ask us. Yeah. We'll be there for you.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to get a hold of the Shepherdesses, you can reach out to the church office directly, or you can email shepherdess@wildwoodtlh.com, and we'll be sure to send that along. Thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing your story. It's exciting to hear how God moves in so many different ways in people's lives, and we're so thankful that he moved in your life and that he brought you here to Wildwood, and that you have this great service to the women here at Wildwood. We also know that you have stories as well. We love to hear the stories of the members of our congregation. We encourage you to tell them to us. You can do so by going to wildwoodtlh.com/stories. It's a very simple form you can fill out to say, how has God moved in your life? How is he healing or moving or saving, whatever is going on right now, so that we can encourage one another with that. I hope you'll consider doing that, and I hope you'll join us again for another episode of the Make Disciples podcast.